Hello, are you here to debate?
I am.
All right, what's your name, age, and pronouns?
Tyler, 28, and then he, him.
Okay, Tyler, what are you here to debate about?
The abolish police and prisons.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Boo.
So the one problem that I have with abolishing both the police and the prison system is that what would we do with the criminals? Because the problem is no matter what we do, there's always going to be some sort of criminal element, whether that be as lowly as people going in and stealing stuff from the store to as high as like corporate corruption. Like there's always going to be a criminal element.
Yeah, what we would do is we would put them into long-term rehabilitation centers or long-term mental health centers, depending on their need and the needs of the society at that given time.
Okay. So what about
Same answer.
violent offenders?
Same answer, depending on
So
their
we're
needs
just
and the needs of the society. Long-term rehabilitation centers or long-term care centers.
okay. So the problem that I have with that is not really a problem with that, but it basically breaks down to I've worked inside a prison for 4 years,
Okay.
and we offered rehabilitation program, and it wasn't just like, oh, you can go do this rehabilitation program and do whatever. It was very structured where you have to do, if you came in there with any sort of drug or any sort of alcohol crime, like let's say you got multiple DUIs or multiple drug charges, you had to attend either NA or AA meetings.
Rehabilitation does not work if it's in a carceral setting, because the issue with how carceral settings affect the human psychology, it leads to further violence. This is why we see better when we see the way the Norwegian prison system is structured, and they've structured their prisons to be more akin to like a college campus. And you have like singular rooms. They have the ability to leave and exit their room. They have the ability to decorate the room however they want. They have the ability, a lot of people have the ability to leave on the weekends. This leads to better rehabilitation efforts. When we are confining in American prisons are historically overcrowded. We're confining 2 to 3 people to a room, plus people sleeping outside of the rooms on cots because the rooms are full, and they're eating shit food, and they're being treated like they're lesser than, and they're being treated like dogs. This leads to people engaging in more violence, not engaging in self-betterment. It leads to all of this. So we can't rehabilitate in the current carceral system. It just doesn't work, and it doesn't have. This is why we see our recidivism rate in America somewhere around 80%. Well, the Norwegian recidivism rate is around 20%.
Which is true, but the problem there is no matter like working inside the prison, there are people that want to go in there and want to change their life. They do. But you meet some people that go into prison thinking that it's fun and game. And I don't mean that in the way like, oh, whatever, but there's a bunch of people that go in there thinking that I know what this is. I'm just going to go in here and do what I want to do, and it's not going to matter.
Yeah, but this is because of the way. This is because of the way we've structured our prison system in America. We've structured it this way, so people are going into it with this mindset. None of this discounts the fact that it doesn't work.
Yeah. So the problem with that is the people that go in there and go, okay, I'm going to go to this rehabilitation, whatever, the new structure that we built, the rehabilitation, and they say they don't care what they have to do with the rehabilitation. They're not going to do it.
Then
how would you deal with that?
Well, then they wouldn't leave. First and foremost, under a new system, the only people that are going into a long-term rehabilitation center or a long-term mental health center would be people who have committed direct acts of violence to another person. If someone like robs a grocery store, but they don't harm any people while doing so, I'm not putting them in these areas. I'm not doing that. That'd be a waste of resources and a waste of everybody's time. It would only be people who commit direct violence
every day and it not matter.
No, didn't say that. I said they wouldn't go to prison. Prison is not the only form of punishment. It's just the one that we use in America because we want cheap slave labor.
Okay, so let's say somebody goes around the road, like somebody walks into the Apple store and steals a bunch of phones off the thing, which does happen. It actually happens a ton in New York. It happens a ton in bigger cities where people go into Apple stores and do smash and grab. What are we doing with those people?
It would probably be under house arrest because all they did was commit a property crime. But
Okay,
let me ask
so
you. Let me ask you a deeper question. Why do
yeah,
people commit theft? Why does someone rob iPhones from an Apple store?
because they can go sell them on the street.
Why do they sell the apples, the products on the street? What are they after?
They're after money. The
Great.
problem there is
So then why don't we fix the systemic issues in our society that causes wealth inequality, and then these people won't go rob it. Nobody's going to rob an iPhone store if they're getting money. Nobody's going to rob an Apple store if they have the money they need to survive. The reason we do this is because we use police and prison as a band-aid of crime. We don't address the systemic issues for crime. All we do is we put a band-aid over crime, which are police and prisons. This is why countries that historically countries that have lesser wealth distribution problems see less property crime.
so what? Okay, so when you're saying less wealth distribution problems, like Norway, that is the one good example. Places like China, they have prisons still,
Wow.
and their prisons are not set up in a good way.
What? Great. What the fuck does
Even USSR, where it was supposed to be a communist society.
I'll just let you know, China in 2020 did a study where they found out that their crime was due to wealth inequality. They found that out. They found that like this. If this is why crimes in Japan are less. Like this is why typical property crime is less in Japan, because there is less wealth inequality. This is why in the Scandinavian countries these crimes are less, because there's less wealth inequality. Property crime specifically is directly tied to poverty. Poverty plus proximity equals crime. So why don't we fix the poverty issue?
Well, the poverty issue is going to be harder to fix. It's going to be is a hard fix whenever you have people growing up and they do not want, or they do not know how to get out of an area or get out of poverty.
Poverty is a systemic issue. Poverty is a systemic issue. It's not an individual issue. It's a problem with the systems that operate our country.
Which is, well, that's the one thing that we probably agree on is the United States needs to be better, or the communities need to be better with teaching people how to overcome poverty. Which I'm not saying it's not a systemic issue, but whenever people don't even know how to manage their checkbook or manage their bank account and know what bills are going in and coming out.
Wait, but this isn't the issue, because there are people who don't have the money to manage those things because they don't have the money, because they're poor. They don't have the money to, they're not middle class. They're poor. They're under the poverty line. Like, right? Like, again,
my entire life underneath the poverty line.
Okay, great. This would be called survivorship bias. Okay.
No, it's not survivorship. Like, the problem is there are things that you can do to get yourself out of poverty. Like, you don't have to perpetually live in poverty. And I'm not saying that people are choosing to perpetually live in poverty, but they're not being shown the way to get out. If I'm shown the only way that I can get out of poverty is by doing what everybody else is doing to show off that they have money, then that's what I'm going to do. If I see that this person went and robbed this iPhone store and is selling the iPhone for $400 a piece, I know that I can go do that now and get $400 a pop for an iPhone. That's the problem.
Okay, so
Is
just really
wherever
quickly,
you're not shown
just
the
really
ladder
quickly,
how
just
to
really
get
quickly.
out of it,
When
then
we
it's hard.
look at the ability to move, only 4% of children born in the bottom quintile of poverty are able to move out of there. 4%. If you're born in poverty, you typically tend to stay in poverty. The people that get out are the outliers. When you are
But are these
born,
people?
are these people what?
What I'm saying is, so in the prison that I worked at, it wasn't just, you know what I mean. This is what you do. They were taught trade. Like it wasn't you go work and do this. They were taught plumbing. They were taught welding. They had options to go learn different things. Cooking. We have a great system at the prison that I worked at where they were literally given culinary degrees. They're giving welding certificates and they can go out after this and go weld. They were set up with jobs.
So
There's ways to do the system.
again, none of these programs are expansive enough for everybody and are funded enough that they have the outcomes that we see when these programs are implemented in non-carceral states. So as long as we
So,
continue to have a carceral state, you will continue to see this. And the reason why we don't fund them as well as they should be, and the reason why we don't try to change this is because the state makes money off of prison slave labor. So they do not want people to get better. They want a constant influx of people going into the prison system. It's why it's written into our Constitution that you can be a slave as long as you've committed a crime.
but I live in Missouri. What our offenders produce? They don't produce anything that you can buy. The only thing they produce that you can buy from them, from the state of Missouri, is they produce um, wood carvings.
Thank you,
But
Phil.
that's through the wood carving thing where they teach you how to it would teach you how to carve wood. And you make your own designs and you do your own thing. Now, do they get the money? No, which I think is a problem. But what I'm saying is there are states that allow that, and that needs to be changed where they shouldn't be allowed to be used as free labor.
The
And I
average
agree with
the
that.
average pay, the average pay in the United States for people who are incarcerated is 60 cents an hour. That is the average that people are making across the United States while being incarcerated. This does not take into account the multiple states that do not pay prisoners anything, such as Texas, and who force prisoners to produce labor under threat of loss of privileges and or solitary confinement. Prisoners specifically produce a lot of labor across the country, and they do not receive the things they need for this. Instead, we treat them as slave labor to generate profit, not only for privatized prison industry, but for the state, as well as for legislators who receive kickbacks from prison industrial complex industries, such as I don't remember the name of it, but such as like telecommunication prison businesses, nutrition prison
Yeah, the
businesses,
phone.
all of these things.
Yeah.
This is
But
a negative. And the reason why, again, they don't fund the programs is so they can keep this going.
which I agree, and then this is what I'm saying is there needs to be more funding towards these programs towards rehabilitation. There needs to be more of a view on prisons as a rehabilitation center, not as a prison. The problem is you are going to have prisoners who do not want to rehabilitate. And I've seen that firsthand where we've had prisoners. I know a guy who has his master's degree
I've already
from the
addressed
prison.
this, dog. I've already addressed the reason why people don't seek out rehabilitation in prisons. It doesn't work in carceral models. These people are treated like less than human. So they don't, the psychology of this makes it so that it's the same reason why if you treat students in schools like they're really bad students, they're going to become really bad students. If I tell a classroom of kids from kindergarten to fifth grade that they'll never amount to anything and they're all dumb and they're all, like, the likelihood of them graduating is slim. It's the same where if we put prisoners into cages and say you're dirt, you're animals, you don't deserve to be out with the rest of society, what's going to happen is they're going to believe this and they're not going to try to better themselves.
They're working in a prison system. That's not how it is at all. We don't, you know, but like the telling them that they're dirt, they're less than humans. Like that's not.
Homie,
They
your
have
limited
resources inside the
experience,
prison.
you need to recognize that your limited experience is limited. When we look at the overarching when we look at like the over what's the word I'm looking for? When we just look at the well, I'll just say overarching again. When we look at the overarching system of carceral justice that we've set up in the United States, this is the norm. This is the norm. Talk to prisoners and they will tell you this is the norm. This is what they see. This is how they're treated. We can look at the civil rights violations that are committed in prisons across the globe. You want to tell me that prisoners aren't treated like garbage when Texas won't put fucking air conditioning in their prisons? But people aren't treated like animals, but people aren't treated like they're less than human? You want to tell me that this isn't happening when, again, they're only making 60 cents on the hour for all of their fucking labor and work that they're trying to do, when they get thrown into solitary confinement, which has been deemed fucking torture by the UN, when all of these, and you're going to tell me that they're not treated like they're less than? They are. They are. We do it constantly. And this is the issue. And so it is harder to rehabilitate people that are treated like this, because they're going to start to act the way you treat them. That's basic psychology.
Okay, but what
You don't think it's dehumanizing that you have
the
to sit on a
problem there
toilet
is?
in
So
front
we
of
get
like
rid
a
of the
room of 3
incarcerational
people?
system, right?
Sure, go ahead.
I mean that is dehumanizing, but also I didn't. The, there is a problem there where there has to. So if you commit a crime in the United States, there has to be a there has to be an answer to that. The problem is whenever you say, "All right, we're going to send you to the rehabilitation center," that's where they're going. They're not going to prison anymore. They get there and they decide, "I don't want to listen to these people. I don't care what they have to say, and I'm going to start assaulting them."
Because this is the way we
What are we
set the
going to do then?
system up. Because this is the way we set the
What
system up.
do
It's going to take a while to change this. It's a bottom
there's
up
still
method. It's
assaults
not a
in the
top down
Norwegian.
method. It's going to take a while to change this. But it's not, again, Norway experienced things like this. They had a bunch of violence in their prison system. They had high recidivism rates. And what they did is they started treating people in prisons like people, and they saw all of this stuff go down. So, like, we have direct examples that this works. They saw the violence rates drop. They saw recidivism drop. All of this just by treating people like people. For example, why should we force people in American prisons to all wear the same jumpsuits? Why? All it is dehumanizes people. It removes their individuality. It's psychological too. Like, there's a psychological reason. The reason we put them in the jumpsuits, it's to dehumanize them. There's a psychological aspect to it. Let them wear what the fuck they want. Give them a dresser. Let them put whatever clothes they want on. This will start to make it so that they are going to act more humane when we allow people to be people. They don't tend to act like monsters.
The problem is there are monsters within society. Like it's not just this is gonna cure. This is not a cure all. It's not going to be
No one's
the
claiming
same
it's a
way
cure-all.
with
I'm not claiming that it
abolishing the
is.
police.
I'm not claiming it's a cure-all. I'm claiming that it's a better system than what we currently have.
I feel as if we agree on the subject that the prison system is not the best that it possibly could be, and there needs to be changes. Now, I would like to talk about abolishing the police. What what are we going to do whenever people are committing violent crime? Who answers those calls? Who makes those arrests for violent
I
crimes?
the issue with
If we
police,
abolish the police,
the issue with police is that police currently exist as tools of violence utilized by the state to protect private property interest. I do not want this. I would like services that exist solely to protect and keep safe people. Police aren't that. Police are under no legal obligation to protect you. They tend to lead to more violent outcomes in situations that they're in. We don't want this. Now, if we have a service that's focused on the protection of people, and this service needs to protect you from violent stuff happening, this is fine. But I'm going to view this as not police because the goal is different. The goal of the police is to protect private property. The goal of this service would be to protect people. So it would be a people first model. And if we are able to systemically address crime to the point that I believe we can, if we focus on wealth inequality, we won't have as much of a need for police to begin with, because the bulk of crimes that police go to are property crimes and crimes born of poverty.
but there are also violent crimes. Like,
I've addressed that already.
there's not just like, yes, property crime is a big thing, but you're saying that you want the police, but not in the way that they are now. I personally
I already
believe
addressed
that
this. I said
defunding the
I don't
police or
believe they would be
abolishing the
police.
police is the wrong way to go about it.
Police don't lead to positive
They're
outcomes.
not going to be police. They're going to be
they'll be something completely different. They won't be police.
The People Protection Agency, whatever they're going to do.
You can call them whatever. If you want to keep calling them police, wait, just really quickly. If you want to keep calling them police because you have no other frame of reference, fine. I'll call them fliggity flu for all I care, right? It doesn't make them, again, I've laid out what the police are. The police are a tool of violence utilized by the state to protect private property. When we have a system that is not doing this, I'm not going to view this as police anymore. I'm going to view it as some completely different thing.
Why would we not put more training into the system we have?
We've been doing more training since the 70s. It hasn't worked. We've been doing more training. Doesn't work. There is no correlation to an increase in training, with an increase in training to an increase in positive police outcomes. There's no correlation to this. Training doesn't work. It never has. We've been trying training forever. The reason why training doesn't work is the goal of police isn't changing. So because the goal of the police isn't, you can do as much training as you want, but if the goal stays the same, the training doesn't matter.
So the goal of the police, I understand they're protect private property, but they're also there to protect the people too.
No, they're not. They're under no legal obligation to protect you. They're under none. This is Castle Rock Supreme Court case, Castle Rock v. Gonzalez. The Supreme Court ruled police are under no legal obligation to protect anybody. And in fact, again, we can look at situations with police. If we look at specifically school shootings, every school shooting since Columbine, we can look at every single one. Schools with a police presence lead to a higher mortality rate. More children die in the schools with police than the schools without police. More kids die. We can look at the constant ways police break civil rights and all this other stuff. We can look at the way police lie in order to just unalive America. Like this, if we do not change the purpose of the system, then just throwing training and money and all this other stuff to the system is not going to do anything, because we're not addressing the purpose of the system.
I think that's where we're going to disagree the most. Is the purpose of the system, because I don't see them as. Now, I've had to personally call the police, and they were here to protect me. And I'm sure other people have had to do the same thing, where they had to come and protect me. or not protect me, but protect them. Now, there are cases where bad police do bad things. I'm not defending bad police at all. Do I think the police, what happened to George Floyd, should have happened? No. But the problem there is you have police officers who get in a high stress situation who should not be in high stress situations. Same way as a correctional officer. You get correctional officers who should not be in those situations and should not have made it as a correctional officer to begin with.
Why is
And
it that we have a
that's where I think
system?
the problem is.
Why is it that we have a system that allows this to happen?
We shouldn't. There should be a reform in the system in general. I don't think we should
how would we do
abolish
this?
the
By
police.
changing the purpose of the system. If the purpose of the system becomes protecting people, then you can't have a police officer who, for instance, unalives somebody, or who breaks someone's civil liberties or breaks someone's constitutional rights, just go to another fucking police department in another state and start working there. Right? You can't have a police who beats up somebody in New York, gets fired, and so goes and gets hired in LA. Right? Because it's not about protecting people. Again, the Supreme Court said that the police have no duty to protect you. As a citizen, as an individual person, they have no duty to protect you because they're not worried about protecting you. They're worried about protecting private property interests.
Well, so the Supreme Court ruling was not that the police officers are obligated to protect individuals, but protect the public as a whole. That's the public duty doctrine. So they are under no constitution to protect an individual, which I don't think that's right, but unfortunately that's where we're at with the Supreme Court ruling. But they have to protect the public as a whole. And what I'm saying is there needs to be vast reforms in policing as a whole. We need more training in, we called it in the prison. There's basically where we're able to talk somebody down. And it is used in very few states, both for corrections and policing. And I believe that we need to focus more on putting police in stress scenarios in training versus them just taking online courses, them just taking that, because that was the problem at the prison is I would just get a video to watch to learn something. Whereas there needs to be more in classroom, in person training. There needs to be more training to that where I am reacting to the situation, not just watching a video of how I should react to a possible situation. Because the problem is right now, a majority of your police trainings are done on the computer because you not have the funding to do them in a classroom with real life scenarios that people have encountered.
So I'm just, again, you haven't been able to counter the facts that more training does not lead to better outcomes. Different types of training have not led to better outcomes. We've been changing the way Americans train police like every 10 years. We've been doing this over and over again. It doesn't work. And you've not been able to counter with the fact that when we look at countries that have adopted the method that I'm talking about, that we see more positive outcomes in terms of violence, in terms of recidivism, all of this. But we have been talking for 30 minutes, so I do want to move on to the next person. So
All right.
thanks for coming up and chatting.